You know what the problem with humans is? They look soft. I mean really, truly, pathetically soft. No exoskeleton. No natural armor plating. No venomous sacs or retractable claws. Just this weird, fleshy exterior that bruises if you poke it too hard. So when Cadet Maya Reeves walked into the Galactic Military Academy's orientation hall that first day, every single one of us thought the same thing. This was going to be hilarious. The orientation hall on Station Khrushchev was massive, easily the size of 300 standard dwelling units. And it was packed. 73 species from across the Federation, all crammed together, all sizing each other up. The air smelled like a chemistry experiment gone wrong, which happens when you mix that many different biological processes in one enclosed space. The Vrexians were hulking in the back row, their forearms crossed in what I'd learned was their version of a confident stance. The Quillith were hovering near the ceiling, their crystalline bodies refracting the station's artificial light into rainbow patterns. And then there were the Morgath, my people, Scaled and Betel, sitting in the middle section because we're not show-offs. I was sitting next to Kelvin, my clutch brother, when the humans arrived. Oh, ancestors preserve us, Kelvin muttered, his secondary eyelids flickering with amusement. Is that one of them? She was small. I'm not being cruel, just factual. Maybe 5.5 feet tall in their measurement system, which put her at chest height to most Morgath. She had dark skin, darker than the void between stars, and her hair was pulled back in some kind of tight configuration that looked simultaneously practical and uncomfortable. But it was her uniform that really reeled everyone's attention. It fit her wrong. See, the Galactic Military Academy provides standard-issue uniforms for all cadets. They're designed to accommodate literally hundreds of body types, using adaptive fabric that molds to whatever shape you happen to be, except the humans had apparently arrived so last minute that the quartermaster had to guess at measurements. So Maya Reeves was standing there in a uniform that was simultaneously too loose in the shoulders and too tight across the chest, with sleeves that went past her fingertips. Someone in the Vrexian section started laughing, then someone else. Within 30 seconds the entire hall was roaring. Look at it, one of the Quillith chimed, their voice like bells made of mockery. The great human warriors we've heard so much about, did they send their younglings by mistake? A Vrexian called out. Maya just stood there. Her face was completely blank, which I would later learn was a very dangerous sign in humans. But at that moment, with half the hall literally pointing at her, she looked like she was trying to decide whether to fight 700 people or just leave. Commander Thrace, our instructor, was a Drovian, which meant he was basically a walking tank with 3 eyes and 0 patience for nonsense. He slammed one massive fist down on the podium, and the sound echoed like a gunshot. Silence. The hall went quiet faster than a Quillith in a gravity well. Cadet Reeves, Thrace rumbled, his voice like grinding stones. Take your assigned seat. Row 47, Section C. That was our section. Of course it was. Kelvin looked at me with all 3 eyes wide. No. Tell me the human isn't going to be in our unit, but she was. Maya walked down the aisle, those 2 long sleeves swishing, and every step she took was accompanied by barely suppressed giggles from various species. She passed a group of Nithral cadets who literally had to hold each other up, they were laughing so hard. A Vrexian stuck out one of his 4 feet trying to trip her. She stepped over it without even looking down. When she reached our row, she sat down 2 seats away from me, folded her hands in her lap and stared straight ahead at Commander Thrace. Her expression hadn't changed once. Blank. Empty. Like looking at a wall. This is going to be a disaster, Kelvin whispered. Humans are supposed to be these great warriors, right? The species that conquered their own planet? This one looks like she'd lose a fight with a cleaning drone. I didn't respond because Commander Thrace was beginning his speech about honor, duty, and the proud traditions of the Academy. The usual stuff, but I kept sneaking glances at Maya, trying to figure out what was going on behind that blank expression. The thing about the Galactic Military Academy is that it's not actually about military training, not really. Sure, they teach you tactics and weapons and all that standard combat stuff. But the real purpose is integration. The Federation spans 412 inhabited worlds, and most of those species can't stand each other. The Academy takes cadets from every member species and forces them to work together, fight together, bleed together. The idea is that if you survive your training alongside aliens, you'll be less likely to murder them when you're stationed together on some frontier outpost. Theory and practice don't always align. After orientation, we were split into training cohorts of 20 cadets each. Mixed species, mixed skill sets, Maximum chaos. Kelvin and I ended up in cohort 17, along with 3 Rexians, 2 Quillith, a Drovian who was smaller than average, which meant he was only twice my size, 4 Nithril, 1 Kessic, and yes, 1 human. Maya Reeves was the only human in the entire academy that cycled. Apparently, Earth had only recently joined the Federation, and they were still figuring out the whole galactic citizenship thing. She was a test case, a proof of concept, a walking, breathing experiment to see if humans could cut it alongside species that had been traveling the stars for millennia. No pressure or anything. Our first training exercise was scheduled for the following morning. Combat simulation in the virtual arena. Nothing lethal, just a way to assess our baseline capabilities. I went to my assigned quarters that night feeling pretty confident. I was 3rd in my clutch for combat scores. Kelvin was 5th. We'd trained for this our entire lives. Humans had been in space for what? 50 years? 60? How much could one possibly learn in such a short time? The next morning we assembled in the staging area. The virtual arena was a massive dome that could simulate any environment, any threat, any nightmare the instructors could imagine. Today's scenario was straightforward. A simple combat exercise against AI-controlled opponents in an urban environment. Stick together, watch each other's backs. Complete the objective. Maya showed up wearing a proper fitting uniform this time. Someone in logistics had clearly worked overnight to get her sorted out, but even with clothing that actually fit, she still looked ridiculously out of place next to the Rexians and their rippling muscles, or the Quillith with their razor-sharp edges, or even the Nithril with their 6 legs and natural speed. All right, listen up. Instructor Vec was running this exercise. She was Kessic, which meant she was about 4 feet tall, covered in blue fur, and could probably rip any of us in half if she felt like it. Kessic were deceptively strong. This is a basic combat assessment. You will work as a team. You will complete the objective, or you will fail and I will make your lives very, very unpleasant. Are we clear? Yes, instructor, we all shouted. Well, most of us shouted. Maya just said it in this quiet, flat voice that somehow made it sound like she was commenting on the weather. We filed into the arena. The simulation kicked in and suddenly we were standing in what looked like a bombed-out city. Buildings with holes blown through them. Debris everywhere. The air smelled like smoke and ozone. It was impressively realistic. Spread out, ordered Kreth, one of the Rexians. He'd immediately assumed leadership because of course he had. Rexians always think they're in charge. Nithril, take point. Morgath, middle positions. Quillith, aerial reconnaissance. Human. He paused, looking at Maya like she was a piece of equipment he didn't know how to use. Just stay in the middle and try not to die. I saw something flicker across Maya's face then. Just for a second. But it was gone before I could identify it. We moved through the simulated city in a standard patrol formation. The Nithril scouts were fast, darting between cover points. The Quillith were hovering above us, calling out positions. Kelvin and I were watching our flanks. The Rexians were being loud and aggressive because that's what Rexians do, and Maya was in the center, walking steadily, her head on a swivel, not saying a word. The first contact came fast. AI opponents dropped from the buildings, armed with simulated weapons that would register as hits if they tagged you. The Nithril scattered. The Quillith started dive bombing. The Rexians charged forward, roaring. It was complete chaos. I dropped behind cover, returning fire at the AI opponents. Kelvin was beside me, his aim steady. We were doing okay. Not great, but okay. Then I heard one of the Rexians scream. The simulation's way of telling us he'd been hit and was out of the fight. Fall back. Krath was yelling. Regroup. We tried. We really did. But the AI was adapting faster than we were coordinating. Another Rexian went down. One of the Nithril took a hit and disappeared in a flash of light. We were getting slaughtered, and through it all Maya Reeves was just standing there in the open. Human! I yelled. Get to cover. She didn't move. She was just watching the AI opponents, her head tilting slightly like she was working out a math problem. An AI soldier appeared on a rooftop, weapon aimed directly at her. I opened my mouth to shout a warning. Maya moved. I don't have the words to describe it properly. 1 second she was standing still. The next second she was somewhere else entirely, and the AI soldier was crashing down from the rooftop with what the simulation registered as a broken neck. She'd somehow climbed a building, crossed 20 feet of open space, and neutralized a target in the time it took me to blink. What the? Kelvin's mouth was hanging open. Maya dropped back to ground level, landed in a roll that no Morgath could have managed with our rigid spines, and came up with the AI soldier's weapon. She fired 3 times. 3 more AI opponents dropped. The remaining members of our cohort were just standing there, staring. "Are you going to help?" Maya asked in that same flat voice, "or should I just finish this myself?" That snapped us out of it. We rallied, started fighting like an actual team instead of a group of individuals, with Maya somehow always in exactly the right position, covering angles we didn't even know were exposed. We managed to complete the objective with minimal additional casualties. When the simulation ended and we were back in the staging area, nobody was laughing anymore. Instructor Vec was reviewing the combat footage, her blue fur bristling in what I'd learned was Keswick excitement. Cadet Reeves, front and center. Maya walked forward, her expression still blank. That was the single most impressive individual performance I have seen from a first-day cadet in 17 cycles. Vec said, "Where did you learn to move like that?" "Earth," Maya replied simply. "Care to elaborate?" "Not particularly, instructor." The silence in the staging area was deafening. You didn't refuse to answer an instructor's questions. You just didn't. I was waiting for Vec to explode, to assign punishment duties, to do something. Instead, Vec laughed. Actually laughed. "I like you, human." "Dismissed. All of you." We filed out in stunned silence. In the corridor outside, Krath grabbed Maya's shoulder with one of his 4 hands. "How did a human learn to fight like that?" he demanded. Maya looked at his hand on her shoulder. Then she looked up at his face. She still wasn't smiling, but something had changed in her eyes. Something cold. "You might want to let go," she said quietly. "Or what, little human?" In one smooth motion, Maya twisted out of his grip, grabbed his arm and did something complicated. Krath, who weighed probably 400 pounds and had 4 arms to fight with, ended up face down on the floor with his own arm bent at an angle that looked extremely painful. "Or this," Maya said, still in that quiet voice. She let him go and walked away, leaving all of us staring after her. "Okay," Kelvin said eventually. "So maybe the human isn't completely useless." That night in the common area, everyone was talking about Maya Reeves. The human who moved like gravity was optional. The human who'd taken down a Rexian with 1 arm. The human who might actually be dangerous. I was curious. More than curious, if I'm being honest. So when I saw Maya sitting alone in the corner of the common area, I walked over. "Mind if I sit?" I asked. She shrugged, which I'd learned was the human gesture for "I don't care either way." I sat down anyway. Up close I could see she had scars. Small ones, barely visible, but they were there. On her knuckles, on her forearms. The kind of scars you get from fighting, not from accidents. "That was impressive today," I said. "The combat simulation, thanks." She didn't look at me, just kept staring at the wall. "Where did you really learn to fight like that?" "Earth." That's not an answer. For the first time she smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was the smile of someone who's heard a funny joke that no one else would understand. "Sure it is," she said. "Humans have been fighting each other for our entire recorded history. Thousands of years. Hundreds of different martial arts. Combat systems. Military doctrines. We've had world wars that killed millions. We've developed weapons that can destroy our entire planet. Fighting is basically our primary cultural export." I stared at her. "That's horrifying." "Yeah," she agreed. "It really is." She stood up then, getting ready to leave. But I noticed something. When she reached up to adjust her collar, her sleeve pulled back slightly and I saw the edge of something dark on her shoulder. Ink. A tattoo. "What's that?" I asked before I could stop myself. Maya's hand immediately moved to cover it. "Nothing." Didn't look like nothing. She studied me for a long moment, like she was trying to decide something. Then "It's a reminder," she said finally, "of where I came from. What I survived." "Can I see it?" "No," and she walked away, leaving me with more questions than answers. The next few weeks followed a brutal pattern. Training, eating, sleeping, repeat. The academy didn't believe in gentle integration. They believed in throwing you into the deep end and seeing who could swim. Combat simulations, tactical exercises, survival scenarios, academic courses on Federation law, alien cultures, and advanced weapons systems. Maya excelled at all of it, and slowly, grudgingly, the rest of the cadets started to respect her. The Rexians stopped trying to intimidate her after she put 3 of them on their backs in a hand-to-hand combat class. The Quillets started asking her for tactical advice. Even Kelvin admitted that having a human on the team wasn't the worst thing that could happen, but nobody really understood her. She didn't socialize, didn't join in the evening gatherings where cadets from different species tried to find common ground. She trained, studied, slept, and repeated the cycle, like a machine. I kept noticing the tattoo though. Every now and then her sleeve would shift, or her collar would move, and I'd catch a glimpse of dark ink on her skin. I became a little obsessed with it, if I'm being honest. What could possibly be so important that she'd marked her skin permanently? What reminder could be worth that? The answer came during our 6th week at the academy, during an exercise that would change everything. The survival exercise was supposed to be routine. That should have been our first warning, because nothing at the Galactic Military Academy was ever routine. But we were 6 weeks in, feeling confident, maybe even a little cocky. We'd survived the initial hazing. We'd proven ourselves in combat simulation. We were becoming an actual team instead of a random collection of species who barely tolerated each other. Pride comes before the fall, as humans apparently say. They have a lot of sayings about failure. You'd think that would have been another warning sign. Commander Thrace briefed us in the main assembly hall. 73 cadets representing every species in our training cycle, all standing at attention while he explained the exercise. You will be dropped in the Kreshka wilderness, he announced, his 3 eyes scanning the room. Teams of 5, mixed species. You will have minimal supplies. Your objective is to reach the extraction point 50 miles north within 72 hours. You will face environmental hazards, wildlife, equipment failures, and each other. That got everyone's attention. Each other, Commander? One of the Quillith asked, their voice chiming with confusion. This is a competition, Thrace continued. The first 5 teams to reach extraction will receive commendations. The last 5 teams will repeat basic training. All of it. The room erupted in worried muttering. Repeating basic training meant another 12 weeks of hell. Nobody wanted that. Teams are assigned, Thrace said, pulling up a holographic display. Check your data pads. You have 2 hours to prepare. Dismissed. I checked my data pad immediately, hoping I'd be teamed with Kelvin. We worked well together. We understood each other. Of course the Academy had other ideas. My team was me, 2 Mithril named Visk and Tara Bakalith called Shimmer, and Maya Reeves. Oh, ancestors have mercy, I muttered. Problem. Cadet Foreign. Maya had appeared beside me, silent as always. I still hadn't figured out how humans moved so quietly despite being relatively large and having no natural stealth adaptations. No problem, I lied. Just reviewing the team composition. She looked at the datapad over my shoulder. 2 scouts, 1 aerial reconnaissance, 1 standard infantry, 1 human. Could be worse. How exactly could it be worse? She smiled that not quite friendly smile again. We could have drawn 3 Rexians. Those guys still think the solution to every problem is charging at it and yelling. She had a point. We assembled with our team in the preparation area. Visk and Tora were already arguing about the best route in their chittering language. Shimmer was floating nervously, their crystalline body reflecting anxiety in sharp, jagged light patterns, and Maya was calmly checking her equipment with the kind of methodical precision that suggested she'd done this 1,000 times before. All right, I said, trying to take charge because someone had to. We need a plan. The Kreshka wilderness is no joke. Temperatures drop below freezing at night, the local predators are aggressive, and we're competing against 18 other teams who want this just as badly as we do. I say we move fast, Visk said. My species can maintain running speed for hours. We take the direct route, push hard, reach extraction first. Bad idea, Maya said without looking up from her pack. Direct route means everyone will be funneled through the same terrain. Bottlenecks, ambush opportunities. Some teams will definitely try to sabotage others. The human is right, Shimmer chimed. We should take a parallel route. Slightly longer distance but fewer encounters. That adds time we might not have, Tora objected. We argued for another 20 minutes before finally settling on a compromise route. Not the fastest, not the safest, but theoretically the most efficient. Maya didn't say much during the planning, but when she did contribute, her suggestions were always tactical, always practical, never emotional. The dropships took us to the wilderness at dawn. The Kreshka region was beautiful in a deadly sort of way. Massive trees that stretched hundreds of feet into the air, dense undergrowth that could hide anything, rivers that looked peaceful but had currents strong enough to drag a Rexian under, and somewhere in all that natural wonder were predators that considered all of us potential meals. Our team landed in a small clearing. The dropship didn't even fully touch down, just hovered long enough for us to jump out, then screamed back into the sky. Suddenly it was just the 5 of us and 50 miles of hostile wilderness. Well, Maya said, adjusting her pack, this should be fun. The first day went surprisingly well. Visk and Tara scouted ahead, their 6 legs carrying them quickly over rough terrain. Shimmer provided aerial coverage, warning us about obstacles and other teams in the area. Maya and I held the middle, watching our flanks, keeping the pace steady. We covered 20 miles by nightfall. Not bad, not great, but not bad. Setting up camp revealed the first real personality clashes. Visk wanted to keep moving through the night. Tara wanted to build an elaborate shelter. Shimmer was worried about predators. Maya just found a tree, climbed it with frightening ease, and settled into a branch like she planned to sleep there. "You cannot be serious," I said, looking up at her. "You are going to sleep in a tree." "Better visibility," she replied. "Harder for ground predators to reach. And if another team tries to attack us during the night, I'll see them coming." "What about falling?" "I will not fall." She said it with such absolute certainty that I almost believed her. Almost. I ended up taking first watch while the others slept. Well, while the Nithril slept, Shimmer went into some kind of low-power mode, and Maya was up in her tree, completely still, in a way that was either sleeping or meditating or possibly just turning herself off like a piece of equipment. It was during my watch that I heard it. A sound in the forest, something large moving through the undergrowth. I immediately went on alert, my weapon ready. The sound got closer. Closer. I was about to wake the others when Maya dropped from her tree, landing without a sound right beside me. I nearly shot her out of pure reflex. "Easy," she whispered. "It is just a Kreshka grazer, herbivore. Not a threat unless we startle it." "How do you know that?" "I studied the wildlife briefings." She said it like everyone obviously did that. Like it was strange that I hadn't memorized every creature in the region. The grazer emerged from the trees, and sure enough, it was exactly what she'd said. A massive 6-legged creature with a long neck, peacefully eating leaves. It looked at us with huge, gentle eyes, then wandered off. "You really did study everything, didn't you?" "Information is survival," Maya replied. "On Earth we have a saying, prior preparation prevents poor performance." "You have a lot of sayings. We have had a lot of time to come up with them." She climbed back up to her tree, and I finished my watch without further incident. Day 2 was when things started going wrong. We were making good time, had covered another 15 miles by midday, when Shimmer spotted another team ahead. 3 Rexians, a Drovian, and a Keswick. One of the stronger team composition. "We should avoid them," Tara suggested. "Circle around, stay out of conflict." "Agreed," I said, but the universe had other plans. As we were trying to detour around the other team, we ran straight into a Kreshka predator. A big one, 8 feet tall, 4 arms ending in claws, and a mouthful of teeth that could bite through Morgoth scales like they were made of paper. It roared. We scattered. Visk and Tara went left. Shimmer went up. I dove behind a tree. And Maya, because of course she did, ran directly at the thing. "Human?" "No," I shouted. She ignored me. The predator swiped at her with one massive claw. She slid under it, came up on the creature's blind side, and did something to its leg that made it scream and collapse. "Move!" she yelled at us. Now, we ran. The predator tried to follow, but whatever Maya had done to its leg had damaged it badly. We put distance between us and the creature didn't stop until we were a mile away and certain it hadn't pursued. "What did you do to it?" Shimmer asked, their voice chiming with astonishment. "Severed its tendon," Maya said calmly, checking her knife. "It will heal, but not quickly enough to chase us. You got close enough to a Kreshka predator to cut its tendon." Fisk's antennae were quivering with disbelief. It was the most efficient solution. She said it like it was obvious. Like getting within arm's reach of a creature that could literally tear her apart was just a normal tactical decision. That night, with 30 miles covered and 1 day remaining, we made camp near a river. Everyone was exhausted. Even the Nithril, who had incredible endurance, were showing signs of fatigue. We rationed our food, purified water from the river, and tried to calculate if we could actually make the remaining 20 miles in time. "We will have to push hard tomorrow," I said. "No breaks except for water. We move fast or we do not make it." Everyone agreed. Even Maya, who had been quiet all day, nodded. We were settling in for the night when disaster struck. It started as a low rumble. Then the ground began to shake. Not violently, but enough to make everyone stand up and look around nervously. "Earthquake," Taurus suggested. "Wrong sound," Maya said. She was already on her feet, head tilted, listening. "That is water." "What?" "Upstream flood. Heavy rains in the mountains, probably." "Move." Now, we grabbed our gear and ran. 30 seconds later, the river exploded. Water came crashing through the forest with enough force to uproot trees. We climbed, scrambled, fought our way to higher ground. As the flood swept through our campsite, when it finally subsided, we were separated. Visk and Tara were on one side of the new, much larger river. Shimmer, Maya and I were on the other. "Can you cross?" I shouted across the water. "Too fast," Visk called back. "Current is too strong." We were stuck. 20 miles from extraction with less than 24 hours remaining, split into two groups by a river that was now impassable. "We need to find another crossing point," Shimmer said. "That could take hours we do not have," I replied. Maya was staring at the river, that calculating expression on her face again. Then she looked upstream, downstream, back upstream. "There," she said, pointing. "Half a mile upstream. The water will be shallower where it spreads out. Not safe, but possible." We hiked upstream, found the spot she'd indicated. She was right. The water was shallower, but the current was still vicious. "We need rope," Maya said. "Shimmer, you fly across first. We tie rope to trees on both sides. Visk and Tara use the rope to cross. What about you and Voren? We will cross with them." It was a good plan. It was a solid plan. It was also incredibly dangerous, but we were out of options. Shimmer flew across, carrying one end of the rope. We anchored it on both sides. Visk and Tara started across, using the rope to steady themselves against the current. Visk made it. Tara made it. I grabbed the rope and stepped into the water. Immediately, the current tried to sweep my legs out from under me. The water was freezing. My scales provided some insulation, but not enough. I pulled myself along the rope inch by inch, fighting the current. Halfway across, my foot slipped on a submerged rock. I went on. The current grabbed me, tried to drag me downstream. I held onto the rope with everything I had, but my grip was weakening. The cold was making my limbs stiff. I was going to lose my hold. I was going to drown. Then hands grabbed my pack. Strong hands. Human hands. Maya hauled me back to the rope with strength that shouldn't have been possible for someone her size. She'd come in after me, was anchoring me against the current while I got my feet back under me. "Move," she shouted over the roar of the water. We crossed together, her grip never loosening on my pack until we reached the far side and collapsed on the bank. "Thank you," I gasped. "No problem." She was breathing hard, soaked through, but already getting to her feet. "We need to keep moving." Lost too much time. The final 20 miles were brutal. We ran when we could, jogged when we couldn't run, walked when we couldn't jog. The sun was setting. We were exhausted, but the extraction point was close. So close. We reached it with 2 hours to spare. The extraction point was a cleared area with a beacon marker. 6 other teams were already there, which meant we'd placed 7th overall. Not great, but good enough to avoid repeating basic training. Everyone collapsed. Even Maya sat down heavily, her usual controlled demeanor cracking slightly to show actual fatigue. The other teams were celebrating, comparing stories of their treks. And then someone noticed Maya's uniform. During the river crossing, her sleeve had torn. Not badly, but enough to expose her shoulder. And on that shoulder, visible to everyone, was her tattoo. It was beautiful in a horrifying sort of way. Black ink, incredibly detailed. It showed Earth from space, the blue and green planet humans called home. But surrounding the planet were names. Hundreds of names. Thousands maybe. Tiny text spiraling around the image of Earth in rings. Everyone went silent. One of the Rexians, a cadet named Thorax who'd been on a different team, walked over to get a closer look. "What is that?" he asked. Maya looked down at her exposed shoulder, then back up at Thorax. For the first time since I'd met her, her expression showed actual emotion. Pain, grief, anger, all of it mixed together. "Names," she said quietly. "Names of what? People who died in the last war." The silence got heavier. "How many names?" someone asked. 32,416, Maya replied. "Everyone from my city who didn't make it out when the orbital strikes hit. I was 12. I survived because I was visiting my aunt in another region. Everyone else I knew, everyone I loved, died in 3 hours. Nobody knew what to say. Even the Rexians who loved to talk were quiet. The last war," I said slowly, pieces clicking together in my head. "That was the conflict that ended right before Earth joined the Federation. The one between human nations." "Yes," Maya said. "We nearly destroyed ourselves. Nuclear weapons, biological agents, orbital bombardment. We came very close to extinction. closer than most species ever get. And when it was over, when the killing finally stopped, we looked at what we'd done and realized we had a choice. Keep fighting until we destroyed ourselves completely or find another way. She pulled her sleeve back up, covering the tattoo. So we chose another way. We put aside our differences, unified under one government, dedicated ourselves to making sure nothing like the last war ever happened again. And when the Federation made contact, we saw it as an opportunity, a chance to take everything we'd learned from nearly destroying ourselves, and use it to help protect others. That is why you are here, Shimmer said, understanding dawning in their voice. You are not just representing humanity, you are carrying your dead with you. Every day, Maya agreed. Every single day. That tattoo reminds me why I fight. Not for glory, not for honor, but because I know better than anyone else in this academy what happens when soldiers fail, when leaders fail, when people who are supposed to protect others choose violence instead. She stood up, adjusting her pack. So yes, I studied every briefing. Yes, I train harder than anyone else. Yes, I take every exercise seriously, even the ones that seem routine. Because to me nothing is routine. Every mission, every exercise, every single day is a chance to make sure what happened to my world doesn't happen to someone else's. The dropships arrived then, coming to take us back to the academy. As we loaded up, I noticed something. The other cadets were looking at Maya differently now. Not with mockery. Not with amusement. With respect. Maybe even a little bit of awe. Back at the academy, word spread about Maya's tattoo, about what it meant, about the story behind it. Within a week, everyone knew. The human who carried 32,000 names on her skin. The survivor of a war that nearly ended her species. Training continued. Exercises continued. But Maya was no longer the outsider. No longer the strange soft alien that everyone assumed would fail. She was one of us. More than that, she was someone we all aspired to be. Someone who had faced the worst her species could offer and come out the other side not broken but determined. Kelvin approached me one evening in the common area about a month after the survival exercise. I was wrong about humans, he said simply. Yeah, I agreed. We all were. They look soft, but they are not soft, are they? I thought about Maya climbing buildings, fighting predators, crossing flooded rivers. I thought about her carrying the weight of 32,000 dead people and still getting up every morning to train. I thought about everything humans had survived, everything they'd overcome. No, I said. They are definitely not soft. They are survivors. And that might be the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Maya walked past us then, heading to the training rooms for her nightly routine. She nodded at us as she passed. A small acknowledgement. She is still training. Kelvin asked. It is late. She always trains late, I said. Every night. 2 hours after everyone else stops. Why? I thought about the tattoo. About the name spiraling around the image of Earth. About a 12-year-old girl surviving when everyone she knew died. About turning that survival into purpose. Because she made a promise, I said. To 32,000 people who can't fight anymore. She fights for them. And for humans, promises to the dead are sacred. Kelvin was quiet for a moment. Processing that. I am glad they joined the Federation, he said finally. The humans. I am glad they are on our side. Yeah, I agreed, watching Maya disappear into the training room. Me too. The moral of the story, if there is one, is simple. Never judge a species by its appearance. Never assume soft means weak. And never, ever underestimate someone who has survived their own extinction and chose to become stronger because of it. Humans look soft. But underneath that vulnerable exterior is something we had never encountered before. A species that nearly destroyed itself, looked into the abyss, and decided to climb back out. A species that carries its dead with it, literally written on their skin as a reminder of what they're fighting to prevent. Maya Reeves graduated top of our class. She's a commander now stationed on the frontier, protecting colonies from raiders and hostile forces. I serve under her, along with Kelvin and half our old training cohort. We chose to follow her because we know something the rest of the galaxy is still learning. When you have a human on your side, you have someone who understands loss, who knows the cost of failure, who will fight with everything they have to protect the people they're responsible for. We laughed at the human cadet when she first arrived. Laughed at her ill-fitting uniform and her small frame and her soft skin. Nobody laughs anymore.